How long have I been standing here, and what, dear God, is that smell? The questions popped into my head, but there are no answers in the thick, heavy air of this antique shop. I don't even remember coming inside. It was quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was my own heart pounding. The air smelled musty, dusty, and stale. A sickly yellow light came through the dirty windows. It shone on a maze of old junk, broken down furniture, piled high like coffins, dark old silverware, and creepy dolls. I swear their smiles got wider when I wasn't looking straight at them. My coat felt damp. Was it raining? I glanced at a dark mirror and barely recognized the wide, scared eyes staring back. This place wasn't just a shop. It felt like a tomb, and I felt a heavy waiting silence all around me. Then I saw the paintings. They were hung everywhere, crowded on the walls like silent watchers. Portraits of serious-looking people from long ago, dark landscapes, pictures of dying flowers. Most were just old, forgettable, but one wasn't. It was small, maybe the size of a book page, but it felt important, heavy. It seemed to pull the light towards it. The painting showed a simple, dim room, with one wooden chair right in the middle. The chair was empty, but it felt like it was waiting for someone, waiting for me. The way it was painted looked rushed, almost angry. The colors were mostly dull grays and browns, but it was the feeling of the painting that got me, a deep disquiet, like something terrible was hiding just out of sight. It felt familiar, like a half-remembered nightmare. "See something you like?" The voice rasped right behind me, dry like dead leaves. I jumped, spinning around. An old man stood there, appearing out of nowhere. He looked ancient, his face a map of deep wrinkles, his eyes cloudy white. He leaned on a crooked cane. When he smiled, his teeth were yellow and uneven. He smelled like damp earth. "It's interesting," I managed to say, my voice tight. I looked back at the painting. I couldn't help it. "What's its story?" He chuckled, a rattling sound. "Story? No story, really. Just been here for ages. Nobody ever buys it." He shuffled closer. His cloudy eyes seemed to fix on me. "Guess it makes folks uneasy. Too much shadow in it." A cold feeling ran up my spine. "How much?" The words felt forced out of me. His smile got wider, stretching the tight skin on his face. "For you? $50. He leaned in, his breath unpleasant. "And some free advice. Don't hang it in your living room." I barely heard the warning. The painting was calling to me. I paid him, the bills feeling strangely cold in my hand. He snatched the money quickly. I grabbed the small wrapped painting and hurried out of the shop, back onto the street. The air outside felt heavy, accusing. My apartment felt wrong when I got back, like the shop's dusty silence had followed me home. The air still had that faint, musty tang. I unwrapped the painting. It seemed smaller now, less powerful. Maybe it was just the creepy shop, the weird old man. But the feeling wouldn't leave. That feeling of something waiting. I ignored the old man's warning. Why would I listen? I hammered a nail into the wall opposite my couch. It seemed like the right place, and I hung the painting. The empty wooden chair stared back at me. I sat on the couch, staring at it, trying to figure out why I'd bought it. The chair seemed empty, but expectant, like it wanted me to sit in it. A sudden chill hit me, even though the room was warm. This is stupid, I thought. It's just a painting. I tried to watch TV, make dinner, but my eyes kept going back to it. The empty chair. Waiting. Sleep was difficult. I dreamed of dark rooms, empty chairs, and the feeling of being watched. I woke up suddenly, heart pounding. I thought someone was in the room. The clock glowed. 3:07 a.m. The dead of night. Silence. But I felt it. A pressure. A presence. I listened hard. Nothing. Just my own breathing. I finally fell back asleep, but the dreams continued, haunted by that chair. When morning came, gray light filtering in, I went to the living room for coffee. and I stopped dead. My breath caught in my throat. My blood felt like ice. The painting had changed. The chair wasn't empty anymore. Someone was sitting in it. A dark shape, huddled over, its face hidden in shadow. The room in the painting looked darker too, the corners filled with blackness, and on the floor, near the chair, was a dark puddle. It looked wet. It could have been paint or oil, but I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, it was blood. My heart hammered. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. Was I seeing things? I took a step closer, hesitant. The shape became clearer. It wore dark clothes. Its hands were clenched into fists on its knees. Its shoulders seemed to shake, like it was crying silently. The puddle on the floor was definitely blood. "No," I whispered. "This isn't real." I backed away. Paint doesn't just change by itself. Paintings don't start bleeding. Who could I tell? The police? They'd think I was crazy. A doctor? They'd give me pills. An art expert? They'd talk about chemicals and light. No, I was on my own with this. I needed proof. I took a shaky photo with my phone, hoping it showed the change, evidence, or proof I was losing my mind. I spent the day on edge, jumping at every noise. I couldn't work, couldn't think. Every so often, I'd creep back to look at the painting. It stayed the same. A figure crying blood, mocking me. Was it always there? And I just hadn't seen it. No, the emptiness was what drew me in. This was new. Night came down like a heavy blanket. I thought about taking the painting down, hiding it, but the idea of touching it made me feel sick. And where could I hide it, where I wouldn't still feel it? I left all the lights on. Sleep wasn't going to happen. I sat on the couch facing the painting, like a guard, staring at it, trying to understand. The figure stayed slumped in the chair. Hours passed. I must have fallen asleep sitting up, because suddenly, weak sunlight was in the room. My neck hurt. My mouth was dry. Then I remembered. The painting. I looked up, my body instantly rigid with cold fear. It had changed again. The figure wasn't sitting now. It was standing, its back to me, looking deeper into the painted room. It stood stiffly. The blood pool hadn't vanished. It was smeared, like something had been dragged, leading from the chair towards the shadows, where the figure now stood. The room itself looked slightly different too. The shadows darker, sharper. Panic rose in my throat, hot and choking. I fumbled for my phone, needing to call someone, anyone. My fingers shook. Then I stopped. Something about the figure, the coat it was wearing, looked familiar. Dark. A bit damp looking. It looked exactly like my coat, the one hanging by my door right now. No, I gasped. It can't be. It wasn't just a figure. It was turning into me. I cried out and lunged at the wall, tearing the painting down. The nail ripped out of the plaster. I didn't care. I ran to the closet, shoved coats aside, and threw the painting face down inside. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, gasping, my heart banging against my ribs. The wood felt cold, but even with the door shut, I could feel it in there, its presence, waiting. The day was a blur. I paced the apartment like a trapped animal. I avoided the closet door. Every shadow seemed to move. I tried to read, watch TV, anything to distract myself. But my mind kept going back to the painting. How was it doing this? Was it haunted? Was I going crazy? The old man's warning echoed. Don't hang it where you live. It didn't matter where I hung it. It was in my head now. Night fell again. I couldn't stand another night like the last two. The closet door seemed to pulse in the dim light. Was it just my eyes? I thought about leaving, getting a hotel room, but what if it just appeared there too? The thought made me feel sick. I had to destroy it, burn it. Gathering my courage, I yanked open the closet door. The painting lay face down. I flipped it over, heart pounding. I couldn't scream. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. It had changed again. The figure, my figure, was gone. The chair was empty again. But the room, it was my living room. My couch, my coffee table, the pattern on my rug, all painted in those same rough, muddy colors, and standing in the painted doorway, half hidden in shadow, was a new figure. Tall, thin. Its face was a blur, but it felt evil. It wasn't me. It was something else, and it was inside the painting of my home. Looking out, waiting. Pure terror took over. I grabbed the painting. The canvas felt strangely hot and cold at the same time. I stumbled out onto my small balcony. I needed fire, lighter fluid, matches. I ran back inside, clutching the painting. Junk drawer. Yes, matches. My hands shook badly. I struck a match, dropped it, struck another. Finally a flame caught. I held it to the canvas. It caught fire with a soft whoosh. Black smoke poured off it, stinging my eyes. The painted image of my living room twisted and burned. The shadowy figure in the painted doorway seemed to squirm before vanishing into ash. I dropped the burning frame onto the concrete balcony floor and backed away, coughing. I watched it burn until only black soot and glowing embers were left. Relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. It was gone, destroyed, over. I collapsed onto the real couch, shaking. It had to be over. I must have passed out. When I woke up, faint dawn light was in the sky. My body ached, but the heavy feeling, the sense of being watched, it felt lighter. Maybe it was really gone. I pushed myself up, needing water. I glanced at the wall where the painting had been, and froze solid. Hanging on the nail. Perfect. Untouched, like I'd never burned it at all, was the painting. But the scene was different. Horrifically so. No room this time. No familiar painted space. Just absolute, suffocating blackness. It wasn't the absence of light, but a palpable void, swirling and churning like cosmic tar. It seemed to press in from all sides within the frame, promising not just emptiness, but an infinite, hungry depth. And coming out of the exact middle of that consuming darkness was the tall, thin figure, closer now, much closer. Its unnatural height seemed even more pronounced against the boundless void, stretching upwards into nothing. Its body was clearer, defined by stark, impossible angles, like shattered glass, pieced together wrong. But its face was still a horrible blur. Not just indistinct but actively wrong. Like someone had violently rubbed out chalk on a blackboard, leaving behind a swirling vortex of static and smudged gray where features should be. One long, impossibly bony hand, digits, stretched and thin like bleached roots, was reaching out, pressing against the very surface of the painting, against the thin veneer separating its horrifying dimension from mine. The paint around its fingers didn't just ripple, it seemed to convulse, bubbling and stretching like overheated plastic or diseased skin, threatening to tear even under that light pressure. I didn't scream. The breath locked in my throat, burning. Instead, a low, broken groan was torn from my chest. Not just fear, but utter, soul-crushing despair. It was here. I couldn't destroy it. Every attempt felt like trying to stab smoke. I couldn't escape it. It was no longer confined by the frame in any meaningful way. Trying to fight it, trying to comprehend it, just made it stronger, solidified its presence, brought it inexorably closer. The air in the room didn't just get colder, it became lethally frigid, thick with a suffocating density, like breathing ice water. That metallic smell was back too, not just a hint now, but overpowering, the stench of old blood and rust filling my nostrils, coating my tongue. I could taste it, a coppery, sickening tang that made my gorge rise. I could feel the presence was no longer contained in the painting. It was no longer just an object on the wall, but a malevolent entity leaking into my reality. Its cold, foreign energy saturating the air. The shadows in the corners of my living room, usually innocuous, seemed to deepen and stretch, elongating into grasping claws reaching towards me. Animated by the thing's presence, The room was no longer safe. It was becoming its territory. The figure in the painting tilted its blurred head, the smudged void of its face, somehow conveying intense, unnatural curiosity. Its hand, still pressed against the canvas, pressed harder, the long, sharp fingernails scoring the surface. I heard a faint ripping sound at first, like tearing paper, then a louder, more sickening sound, like tearing wet cloth, or worse, tearing flesh. The canvas around the pressing hand wasn't just rippling anymore. It was actively distorting, warping inward, the paint cracking and flaking away in miniature silent avalanches. I couldn't move. My muscles were locked, frozen by a primal terror that went beyond simple fear of death. It was the fear of the impossible, the fear of reality breaking down. I just stood there, a horrified, paralyzed witness, watching the barrier shatter. It was tearing. It wasn't just coming through, it was violating its way through. With a final wet, tearing sound, the figure took a step, not in the painting, but violently out of it. One long, impossibly bony leg detached itself from the canvas with a sickening pop, stepping out of the frame and onto my worn rug. The air where its foot landed didn't just turn freezing cold, it seemed to die. A small circle of absolute zero radiating outwards, the dust motes in the air around it, freezing and dropping silently. Then the other leg followed, unfolding itself from the painting, with a series of sharp clicking sounds, moving with the jerky, unnatural movements of a terrible stop-motion animation. A puppet controlled by frayed, snapping strings. It stood in my living room now, fully manifested, impossibly tall, its silhouette blotting out the light from the window, casting a monstrous, elongated shadow that consumed half the room. Its blurred, horrific face turned, the void of it somehow focusing entirely on me. It raised its other hand, a mirror of the first, and pointed a long, skeletal white finger directly at my chest. The gesture wasn't accusatory, it was possessive. Then it spoke. Its voice wasn't normal sound that vibrated the air. It was a vibration in my bones, a low, resonant hum that bypassed my ears and settled deep in my marrow. A horrifying symphony of whispers, sharp static bursts, and the unbearable grating of stone on stone. "You were chosen," it rasped, the sound crawling into my head like 1,000 centipedes. The words weren't just heard, they were felt, etching themselves onto my consciousness. An empty space, waiting. There was a terrible satisfaction in that last word, a sense of long, patient anticipation finally rewarded. My vision narrowed, the edges of the room fading, collapsing inwards like a dying star. The world outside this encounter ceased to exist. All I could see was this creature, this impossible thing made of paint and fear and cosmic void. It took another step towards me, and as it did, its movements shifted, becoming smoother, sickeningly fluid. A horrible, predatory grace, replacing the earlier jerks. It flowed towards me, a river of pure dread. "Time to take your seat." Its hand, the one that had torn its way through reality, reached for my face. I felt a terrible coldness emanating from it before it even touched me, an absolute zero that promised not just death, but annihilation. The feeling of my very life, my consciousness, being leached out of me, pulled into the vortex of its being. My legs gave out beneath me, the strength dissolving instantly, leaving me a useless, falling husk. As I crumpled to the floor, the last thing my fading eyes saw was the painting on the wall. It had changed one last time. It no longer showed the terrifying blackness or the figure. It showed a dim, empty room, with a single plain wooden chair sitting in the middle. And someone was sitting in it, slumped forward, head bowed. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the soul, that the chair wasn't empty anymore. It was occupied, and the feeling radiating from that slumped figure in the chair was the same draining coldness that was now consuming me. Sunlight streamed into the antique shop. The old man hummed as he dusted off a shelf. On the wall, among the other old items, hung a small painting, a dim room, a single chair in the center. The chair was empty, waiting. A young woman stopped in front of it. "This one," she said softly, tilting her head. "It's interesting." The old man looked up, his cloudy eyes glinting. He smiled his yellow-toothed smile. "Isn't it just?" he rasped. "Everything here has a history. Find something that speaks to you." Sweet dreams.